In this video, they opened their late grandfather's old garage. What was inside brought them to tears. Subscribe to the channel, let's start the video.
Mia and Amir had always wondered about their grandfather's old garage. It was hidden at the far end of the garden, behind tall bushes and thick vines that had grown wild over the years. Since their grandfather passed away, no one had gone inside, and the garage had always seemed mysterious. Sometimes, Mia and Amir would stand at the garden gate and look at the wooden door, imagining what could be inside. Some days they thought it might be full of old tools. Other days, they imagined it held treasures or secret inventions their grandfather had made when he was young. One bright morning, after breakfast, Mia and Amir decided it was time to finally open the garage. They wanted to see what had been kept there for so many years. In the drawer of their grandfather's desk, they found a small, rusty key. The key looked old, with scratches and tiny spots of rust, but it seemed like the right one for the garage. Amir held it tightly, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. "Are you ready?" he asked. Mia nodded. She felt her heart beat faster as she reached for the lock. Amir turned the key slowly. The lock clicked, and the wooden door creaked open with a long, loud sound that echoed in the empty garden. A cloud of dust rose into the air, making them cough. Mia waved her hand in front of her face. The sunlight streamed through the cracks in the wooden roof, making the dust shine like tiny stars. The garage smelled of old wood and forgotten memories. Mia shivered. "It smells like Grandpa is still here," she said softly. Amir smiled, but his eyes were wide. "It feels like he left something for us," he said. The garage was bigger than they had imagined. Shapes covered with white sheets were stacked in corners, and there were shelves along the walls filled with boxes. Some of the boxes were tied with string, and others were open just a little, showing papers and old jars inside. Mia stepped carefully on the wooden floor, which creaked under her weight. She brushed her hand against one of the covered objects. "Do you think these are his inventions?" she asked. Amir shook his head. "I don't know, but I think it is more than just tools." In the corner of the garage, a large wooden chest stood alone. It was old, with scratches that showed it had been used many times, and it had a brass handle that looked shiny even after years. Mia walked closer, her fingers brushing the handle. She felt a strange excitement. "This must be important to him," she said. Amir bent down and touched the lid. "It looks heavy. Let's open it together," he said. They lifted the lid slowly. The chest smelled of old paper and wood. Inside, they saw neatly tied letters, stacks of photographs, and small handmade gifts. Each item seemed carefully arranged, almost like their grandfather wanted someone to find them one day. Mia picked up a letter tied with a red ribbon. She opened it carefully and began reading aloud. The letter was written in their grandfather's handwriting. It spoke of love, memories, and lessons he wanted them to learn. Tears filled Mia's eyes as she realized the letters were for her and Amir. She looked at her brother. He was holding a photograph of their grandfather as a young boy, smiling and holding a puppy in his arms. On the back of the photo, in small letters, was a note that said, "Always take care of each other." Amir put the photograph down and reached for another letter. This one was older and the paper was fragile. He read about the adventures their grandfather had as a child, how he built a treehouse, and how he learned to fish by the river near their home. The words made them laugh and cry at the same time. Mia found a small wooden box inside the chest. She opened it and discovered a tiny pair of carved wooden birds. They were painted carefully, one in blue and the other in yellow. A note inside the box said, "Friendship is precious. Keep it safe." The garage felt warm and alive as they explored. Each item seemed to tell a story. There were drawings their grandfather had made, old toys he had kept from his childhood, and even a small scrapbook full of photographs of the family through the years. Mia and Amir sat on the dusty floor, surrounded by memories. They realized that their grandfather had left this chest not as something valuable in money, but as a collection of love and care. Each letter, photograph, and small gift was a message to them, a way for him to stay close even after he was gone. Hours passed, and the sun moved across the sky. They kept discovering new things. Amir found a tiny keychain with their grandfather's initials. Mia found a bookmark with a note that said, "Read and learn always." They felt a mix of happiness and sadness. It was sad because their grandfather was gone, but it was happy because he had left them these treasures full of love. Mia whispered, "He wanted us to remember him like this, through stories and memories." Amir nodded and held her hand. "We will never forget," he said. When they finally closed the chest, they felt a new connection to their grandfather. The garage was no longer just a building filled with dust and old items. It had become a place of love, learning, and family. They promised each other to take care of everything they had found and to keep the memories alive. That day, Mia and Amir left the garage with tears in their eyes and warmth in their hearts. They knew they had discovered something very special, something that would stay with them forever. The next day, Mia and Amir could not stop thinking about the treasures they had found in their grandfather's garage. The chest full of letters and photographs had left their hearts warm, but they felt there might be even more waiting to be discovered. After breakfast, they decided to go back to the garage. The sunlight made the garden glow, and the vines on the garage door looked like green curtains hiding secrets. When they stepped inside, the smell of old wood and paper welcomed them again. They moved carefully, as if they did not want to disturb anything. Amir noticed a small door at the back of the garage that they had not seen before. It was almost hidden behind a shelf full of boxes. "Have you seen this before?" he asked. Mia shook her head. "No. Maybe it leads to another room," she said. Together they pushed the door. It opened slowly, revealing a narrow staircase going down into darkness. Mia felt a shiver, but it was not fear. It was excitement. "Let's go," she said. Amir nodded, and they held hands as they stepped down the stairs. The air was cooler down there, and it smelled of old books and soil. When they reached the bottom, they found a small underground room. The walls were lined with shelves full of more boxes and jars. But what caught their attention the most were wooden cabinets with glass doors. Inside the cabinets, they saw something magical. Small objects that looked like pieces of stories. Mia opened the first cabinet. Inside, there were tiny hand-carved figurines. There were animals, people, and tiny houses, each painted carefully in bright colors. A note lay beside the figurines, written in their grandfather's handwriting. It said, "These are the memories of imagination. Keep them safe, and never forget to dream." Mia smiled. She picked up a tiny carved cat and held it in her hand. Amir picked up a small painted tree. "He made all these himself," he said, amazed. Mia nodded. "He wanted us to know that imagination is important." Next, they explored the shelves of boxes. Each box had labels written long ago. One box said, "Special Moments." Inside were photographs of their grandfather as a young man, with friends, with family, and even alone, smiling at the world. There were tickets from places he had visited, pressed flowers, and small notes. Amir found a small notebook. When he opened it, he discovered it was a diary. The diary was filled with stories of his grandfather's childhood, adventures in the countryside, and lessons he had learned. Some pages were about kindness, others about courage, and some about finding happiness in small things. Mia found a box labeled "For You." Inside were letters addressed to her and Amir. Some were letters she had read yesterday, but others were new. They were full of encouragement, funny memories, and advice. One letter said, "Life will sometimes be difficult, but always remember to help others and keep love in your heart." Another said, "Look around. Happiness is everywhere, sometimes in the smallest things." Mia hugged the letters close to her chest. Tears filled her eyes, but this time they were tears of joy. In the corner of the room, they noticed an old wooden desk. It was covered in dust, but the drawers were slightly open. Amir opened one and found more letters and drawings. There were maps of places their grandfather had visited, sketches of plants and animals, and even plans for things he had dreamed of building. Mia opened another drawer and found a small, wrapped gift. Inside was a pair of handmade friendship bracelets, one red and one green, with a note that said, "Always remember your bond. It is stronger than anything." As they explored, Mia and Amir realized something. This room was not just a storage space. It was a collection of their grandfather's life, his dreams, and his love for them. Every object had a story, and every story had a lesson. They could feel his presence, even though he was no longer there. The underground room was like stepping into his heart, seeing the world through his eyes. Hours passed, and they discovered more treasures. There were jars with tiny seashells, pressed leaves, and colorful stones. There were letters from their grandfather's friends, talking about happy times and shared moments. Each item made them smile and sometimes cry. They laughed at the funny stories, and they cried at the sweet memories. Mia picked up a small wooden bird and placed it on the shelf. Amir added a carved tree beside it. Together, they began arranging the room gently, like their grandfather had once done. Before leaving, Mia and Amir sat on the floor and looked around the room. They held hands and promised each other that they would take care of everything, just as their grandfather had wanted. "He left us so much love," Mia said softly. Amir nodded. "Yes, we must keep it safe and remember him every day." They felt a connection not only with their grandfather but also with each other. The garage and the underground room had become a magical place where the past met the present, and where love and memories could live forever. That evening, when they closed the hidden door, Mia and Amir knew they had discovered something rare and beautiful. It was more than just objects. It was a story of life, love, and family. Their grandfather had prepared this for them, and now it was their turn to carry it forward. The next morning, Mia and Amir returned to the garage with a feeling of excitement and curiosity. They had explored the chest and the underground room, and every discovery made them feel closer to their grandfather. But today, they wanted to explore the rest of the garage. There was still more space they had not looked at, and a feeling told them that something very special was waiting. As they entered, the sunlight streamed through the small windows, lighting up the dust in the air. Mia walked toward the shelves along the far wall. She noticed a small wooden box tucked behind some jars. The box was plain, but it had a tiny keyhole. Amir bent down to look. "Do you think it has another letter?" he asked. Mia nodded. She had a feeling this box was important. Amir searched through the chest they had opened before and found an old brass key. It was tiny, delicate, and looked like it might fit perfectly. With careful hands, Mia placed the key in the lock and turned it. The box opened with a soft click. Inside, they found a bundle of papers tied with a ribbon. But these papers were different. They were larger and written in a careful script. As Mia unfolded the first page, she gasped. It was a story, but it was also a message. Their grandfather had written about his life, his childhood, and his dreams, but he had also written letters to them disguised as stories. Each story contained advice, encouragement, and love. Amir picked up the next paper. It was a map, drawn carefully with tiny symbols and words. The map seemed to guide them through their grandfather's life. There were marks showing places he had visited, paths he had walked, and special spots where something meaningful had happened. "He really wanted us to follow his footsteps," Amir whispered. Mia nodded. "Yes, he wanted us to see the world as he saw it." They sat on the floor, reading through the stories, smiling at the funny moments, and sometimes crying at the tender memories. One story told about a day when their grandfather had planted a tree with his parents. He had written how the tree grew with care, and he wanted them to know that life needed patience and love to grow strong. Another story spoke about helping a neighbor who was sick. He wrote how small actions of kindness could make a big difference. As they read, Mia realized that their grandfather had tried to teach them about life in the gentlest way possible. While Amir explored the other shelves, he found an envelope with their names on it. The paper was thick and delicate, and the handwriting was familiar. They opened it together. Inside, there were 2 letters, one for Mia and one for Amir. The letters were personal. In hers, Mia read how their grandfather had watched her grow from a baby to a young girl, how proud he was of her, and how he wanted her to always believe in herself. Amir's letter spoke about courage, honesty, and the importance of following one's dreams. Both letters ended with the same words: "We are never really apart. Love will always find its way." Mia and Amir hugged each other. Their eyes were wet with tears, but their hearts felt full. They realized that their grandfather had not just left things for them to see. He had left a part of himself, a way for them to know him even after he was gone. Every photograph, every letter, every story, and every small gift had a purpose. It was to teach them, guide them, and remind them of his love. Then, Amir noticed a small wooden drawer hidden beneath one of the shelves. He pulled it open and found something that made both of them stop. It was a collection of personal items from their grandfather's childhood. A small pocket watch, a tiny wooden boat, and a set of letters addressed to his own parents. Mia picked up the boat and ran her fingers over it. "He must have loved this when he was our age," she said softly. Amir held the pocket watch and read the engraving on the back. It said, "Time is precious. Spend it with love." The two of them sat quietly for a while, holding these treasures. The garage had become a place of learning and emotion, a place where memories were alive. They could feel their grandfather's presence in the air, in the stories, and in the objects. It was as if he was sitting with them, guiding them with love and wisdom. As the afternoon sun shone through the small windows, Mia noticed a tiny photograph tucked behind a shelf. She reached for it and carefully removed it. The photograph showed their grandfather as a young man, sitting under a tree with a little girl and a boy who looked very much like Mia and Amir. On the back, written in faint ink, were the words, "Family is everything. Hold each other close, and you will never be alone." Mia and Amir held hands, tears running down their cheeks. They understood now that their grandfather had created this garage as a gift for them, a place of love and wisdom. It was not only a treasure of objects, but a treasure of life lessons and guidance. Everything they discovered brought them closer together and closer to him. Before leaving the garage that evening, they carefully closed the wooden drawer, the box of stories, and every cabinet. They promised each other that they would keep everything safe and honor their grandfather's memory. Walking back to the garden, they felt a mixture of sadness and joy. Sadness because they missed him, but joy because they had found a place where his love and life would always stay with them. Mia looked at Amir and smiled through her tears. "He gave us the most beautiful gift," she said. Amir nodded. "Yes, and we will never forget it. We will always remember him through everything here." That night, as they lay in bed, both of them felt a warmth in their hearts. They knew that the garage was not just a room filled with old items. It was a bridge between the past and the future, a place where memories, love, and lessons lived forever. The next morning, Mia and Amir could not stop thinking about their grandfather's garage. The letters, photographs, and stories had already brought them so much joy and understanding, but a part of them felt there was still something more to discover. Today, they decided to explore every corner of the garage carefully, leaving nothing unchecked. They wanted to understand the full story of their grandfather's life and the love he had left behind for them. As they stepped inside, the sunlight made the dust sparkle like tiny stars. Mia walked toward a shelf they had not explored yet. Behind a stack of old wooden boxes, she found a small trapdoor in the floor. She called Amir over. "Look at this," she said. The trapdoor was old and covered in dust, but it had a small brass handle. Amir bent down and tried to lift it, but it was heavy. Together, they pushed it open. Below, a small staircase led to another hidden section of the garage, darker than the previous one, but clearly used carefully by their grandfather. They climbed down slowly, holding each other's hands. The room smelled faintly of wood and earth. When their eyes adjusted to the dim light, they saw something extraordinary. The walls were covered with photographs, drawings, and letters, arranged like a collage. Every piece was connected to another with string and small notes. It looked like a life timeline, showing their grandfather's childhood, youth, and the memories he cherished. Mia gasped. "He made this for us?" she said softly. Amir nodded, feeling the weight of the love in the room. In the center of the room, there was a large wooden table. On it, several small boxes were carefully arranged. Each box had a label, and when they opened them, they discovered small personal treasures. There were medals from school competitions, a first pair of shoes their grandfather had worn, and a tiny journal filled with his drawings and stories. Mia picked up a small wooden whistle. A note under it read, "Use it to call for help, and remember kindness always." Amir found a tiny pocket compass. The note beside it said, "Life may seem confusing sometimes. Follow your heart, and it will guide you true." They spent hours exploring the room. Each discovery brought them closer to their grandfather and closer to each other. The walls were covered with reminders of his lessons: kindness, courage, patience, and love. Some of the photographs showed him helping neighbors, planting trees, or playing with friends. There were also letters from people he had helped, thanking him for his kindness. Mia and Amir felt like they were stepping into a world of goodness that their grandfather had created and wanted them to continue. At the far end of the room, Amir noticed a small locked cabinet. It was different from the others. The wood was polished and the lock looked strong. Mia found a key taped underneath the table. Her hands shook as she inserted it into the lock. With a soft click, the cabinet opened, revealing something that made both of them stop and stare. Inside were 2 large envelopes, carefully labeled with their names. Each envelope contained a book. The books were handmade with leather covers and thick pages. Mia picked up her book and opened it. Her eyes widened as she realized it was a diary of her grandfather's memories written for her. The pages were filled with stories of his own childhood, lessons he had learned, and personal messages for her. Amir opened his book and discovered the same. There were life lessons, advice, and messages meant to guide him through his own journey. Some pages had drawings, some had maps, and some had small pressed flowers. Every word was full of love. Mia hugged the book tightly. "He knew we would need guidance even after he was gone," she whispered. Amir nodded, tears in his eyes. He wanted us to feel his love and wisdom every day. They spent time reading their books carefully, absorbing every lesson, every memory, and every word of encouragement. For the first time, they fully understood how much effort their grandfather had put into creating this space for them. Then, Mia noticed something at the back of the room. There was a small wooden frame on the wall. Inside was a photograph of their grandfather holding a young puppy. Underneath, written in neat letters, were the words, "Love is the greatest treasure. Hold it in your heart and share it with others." Mia and Amir looked at each other. Everything they had discovered led to this one truth. Their grandfather had not left them riches or money. He had left them love, guidance, and memories, treasures that were far more valuable. As the afternoon sun began to fade, Mia and Amir sat on the floor, surrounded by letters, books, and photographs. They promised each other that they would always take care of everything they had found and pass on the lessons of kindness, courage, and love. The garage, with its hidden rooms and treasures, had become a sacred place. It was a place where their grandfather's spirit lived, where his wisdom could guide them, and where his love could always be felt. Before leaving, they carefully closed the trapdoor, locked the cabinets, and organized the room as their grandfather had arranged it. Mia held Amir's hand. "This is more than a garage," she said softly. "It is a place full of love, life, and memories that will stay with us forever." Amir smiled and nodded. "Yes, we will never forget him, and we will always share his love with others." That evening, as they walked home, the golden light of the setting sun made the garden glow. Mia and Amir felt a deep sense of peace. They had discovered the true treasure of the garage, the love and guidance of their grandfather, preserved carefully for them. It was a gift that would last a lifetime. The morning after their discovery of the hidden room, Mia and Amir could not stop thinking about everything they had found in the garage. The letters, books, photographs, and objects had filled their hearts with love and understanding. They felt as if their grandfather was still with them, guiding them gently through life. Today, they wanted to explore the garage one last time, to make sure they had seen everything and understood the full meaning of the treasures he had left. As they entered, the garage seemed brighter than ever. The sunlight streamed through the small windows, lighting the dust like tiny golden sparks. Mia and Amir moved carefully, their eyes scanning every corner. They felt a sense of peace as they remembered the stories, letters, and objects they had discovered. It was a quiet happiness, a gentle joy that made them smile and cry at the same time. Mia noticed a small shelf in the corner that they had not checked closely before. On it were several jars filled with seeds, each labeled with a tiny note. Amir bent down to read one. The note said, "Plant these and watch life grow. Every small action can create something beautiful." Mia picked up a jar of sunflower seeds and held it carefully. She realized that their grandfather had left these seeds not just as plants, but as lessons. They were a symbol of growth, patience, and hope. Amir nodded. He wanted us to remember that life needs care and attention, just like these seeds. Next, they explored a table covered with old boxes. Inside were more treasures: a small wooden puzzle, tiny carved animals, and handmade decorations. Every object seemed to tell a story. Mia picked up a tiny carved horse and smiled. She could imagine her grandfather carving it carefully, thinking about the person who would one day hold it in their hands. Amir found a small wooden boat with painted sails. He held it and whispered, "He wanted us to dream and imagine, just like he did." After hours of exploring, they sat on the floor surrounded by letters, photographs, books, and objects. Mia opened her grandfather's handmade book again, reading some of the passages she had not read before. One passage spoke about the importance of family. Love each other, help each other, be there for each other, even when the world feels far away. Family is your greatest treasure. Amir read a story about courage and honesty. His grandfather had written about facing challenges with a kind heart and believing in oneself. Each word felt like a gentle hand guiding them, reminding them of lessons that were more valuable than anything money could buy. Then, Mia noticed a small envelope hidden under a pile of photographs. She opened it carefully. Inside was a letter addressed to both of them together. The letter began with their grandfather's familiar handwriting. It spoke of his love for them, how proud he was, and how he had left everything in the garage for them to discover. The letter explained that the garage was not just a place for objects, but a place of memories, lessons, and love. Their grandfather had wanted them to learn kindness, courage, patience, and joy from everything he had left. Tears filled Mia's eyes as she read the words aloud to Amir. "He wanted us to remember him through love, not just memories," she said softly. Amir nodded, his voice breaking a little. "Yes, he wanted us to carry his lessons in our hearts and share them with the world." They hugged each other tightly, feeling the presence of their grandfather all around them. The garage, once dusty and mysterious, had become a sacred place of connection and love. Mia looked around and smiled through her tears. She realized that the true treasure of the garage was not the objects, letters, or photographs, but the love and wisdom behind them. Every item had a purpose, every story had a message, and every letter was a guide. Amir picked up one of the carved animals and placed it gently on the shelf. "We will take care of everything here," he said. "We will keep his lessons alive, just like he wanted." As the sun began to set, Mia and Amir carefully closed the trapdoor, locked the cabinets, and organized the room the way their grandfather had left it. They promised each other that they would return often, read the letters, plant the seeds, and share the stories with future generations. They understood that the garage was more than a room. It was a symbol of love, patience, guidance, and family. Walking back to their home through the garden, the golden light of the evening made everything look peaceful and warm. Mia held Amir's hand. "He left us something more precious than anything else in the world," she said softly. Amir nodded, smiling through his tears. "Yes, he left us his heart, his wisdom, and his love. That is the greatest treasure we could ever have." That night, as they lay in bed, both of them felt a sense of calm and happiness. They knew that their grandfather's love would always be with them, guiding them, comforting them, and teaching them even when he was not physically there. The garage had been a journey into the heart of someone they loved deeply. It had taught them that true treasures are not gold or money, but love, memories, kindness, and the lessons that shape life. From that day forward, Mia and Amir often returned to the garage. They read the letters, organized the treasures, and planted the seeds their grandfather had left. They shared stories with each other and sometimes laughed at the funny moments in the photographs. They carried his lessons into their daily lives, showing kindness, courage, and love to everyone around them. The garage had brought them to tears, but it had also given them joy, understanding, and a connection to their grandfather that would last forever. The garage, once silent and forgotten, was now full of life, memories, and love. Mia and Amir had discovered that the greatest treasures in life are not material, but the wisdom and love we leave behind. And in that understanding, they found happiness, hope, and a bond that could never be broken.